3, 2, 1, and we are off. Outward Unleashed 125. Welcome, viewers. We have had our Christmas, New Year's Eve break, and we are rearing to go. Ash has lined up 7 guests this evening. First 2 hours on YouTube, second half exclusively live on Locals. Locals link in description box. And as you can see, a fully refreshed Stephen Knight is back co-hosting the show.
Full of cheese and Christmas pudding, basically. That's me.
Cheese and Christmas pudding. Oh my goodness. All right, 6 o'clock. Jay Dyer is joining us. He's an InfoWars guest presenter, YouTuber, friend of the channel for many years. And he's going to be letting us know what Klaus Schwab and his cronies at the World Economic Forum have in store for us in 2024. Then author and photographer Peter Duke joins us, first time on the show. He's got a new book out called Stealth, Power, and the Illusion of Democracy. He's going to delve deep into the workings of the power elite, a covert group with a significant global impact. Spanning 24 principles, it reveals various strategies the elite employs to maintain control over us sheeple. And then Stephen picks up at 7.
Indeed. I'll be speaking to clinical and forensic psychologist Dr. John Garrison. He goes under the moniker Dr. G. He'll be explaining why his YouTube has amassed 126,000 subscribers in recent years. His channel is the premier destination for true crime analysis, in-depth exploration of high-profile crime cases, and a comprehensive source of information on psychology. As a seasoned clinical and forensic psychologist, Dr. G brings extensive experience from thousands of forensic evaluations to the table, offering a unique and educational perspective on complex psychological issues. Tonight's discussion will focus on narcissism, relating to some trending figures in the spotlight at the moment. Looking forward to that. And then from 7:30 to 8, I'll be speaking to author of Just Another Country, a novel, the final episode of the Hui trilogy. John Moody's our next guest. Moody is the former executive vice president, executive editor for Fox News, a former Rome bureau chief for Time magazine, and he is the author of 4 books, including Pope John Paul III biography. In Just Another Country, Moody brings an emotionally shattering, politically infuriating conclusion to his fact-based trilogy of China's relentless attempts to destroy the United States, be it through a deadly virus, an endless wave of illegal immigrants, shipments of fentanyl, or artificial intelligence. Worst of all, Chinese AI bots have acquired emotions and are now turning humans into their slaves. Moody will also speak about President Biden's little-known private outreach to President Xi in recent months. And then I believe we're switching over to Locals.
Yep, so Locals at 8. First guest is with Stephen.
Yeah, our first guest on Locals is Dr. Michael Caparelli, who is a former pastor of 16 years and has a PhD in advanced studies in human behavior. Caparelli's book, Monster Mirror, discusses the 100 hours he spent talking to Son of Sam serial killer David Berkowitz about mental health and evil phenomena. And then from 8:30 till 9 p.m., author, entomologist, and University of Wyoming professor of natural sciences and humanities, Jeffrey Allen Lockwood, will be returning to the show. I really enjoyed our last discussion. Jeffrey writes both nonfiction science books as well as meditations. Lockwood is the recipient of the Push-Up Prize and the John Burroughs Medal. On his second appearance on the show, he will be discussing his book, Locust, the devastating rise and mysterious disappearance of the insect that shaped the American frontier, which was described as solving the greatest environmental murder mystery in the history of North America. The sudden and unexplained disappearance of a species that once dominated the western states and provinces.
Wow. He is a great guest. 9 to 10, we've got Murray Knight, final guest on Locals, author and survivor. She proves that recovery is possible from deep trauma. Her films and memoir recount her healing journey from ritualistic CA from human transportation and from another word best not said on YouTube, but it is harrowing, her story. Her journey to the modern day is an inspiring one for anyone who has suffered from childhood trauma. I do believe she's had millions of views on other videos that she's done, really viral, really important story. So today I interviewed Ryan Dawson. Many of you are familiar with the Who Killed E story and the E client list that has gone viral. I underestimated how viral it would go again, but it's gone mega. And Ryan Dawson came on today, and we did an hour and 10 minutes talking about Wexner, the client list, Prince Andrew, President Clinton, and it's all updated with all of the latest information. And that is going to be coming to Locals soon. The link for Locals is in the description box below this video. It's free to join, free to watch the content, most of it over there. So if you want to get that content that is banned off YouTube, then click on the Locals link. And I feel like it's been like a month since I've seen you, Stephen. What have you been up to?
Like I said and implied at the start of the show, just been pushing as much food as possible in this direction, followed by alcohol, and that's basically how Christmas works for me. Don't know. I guess yours is slightly different, but apart from that, I've been enjoying the downtime and seeing family mostly.
Yeah, so it was baby Ziggy's first Christmas, so we took him to his to Jen's parents' families, and it had a big celebration over there. And if people want to see baby Ziggy's first Christmas, it's on the Atwood family channel. It was posted a couple of weeks back, and he's having a jolly good time, as you will see.
How did he get on? Not a load of sensory overload for him.
Yeah, well, his middle name is Wilder, and he's massive. He's in 1-year-old clothes already. He's 25 pounds. He's like bigger than 1-year-olds, and his little rocker that we got him now. He's rocking it so harshly back and forth. It's just a matter of time before he launches himself out of it. So he's definitely living up to his name.
Yeah, future strongman, maybe Olympian of some sort.
Future giant.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Stephen, whether you noticed the Golden Globes host Joe Coy cracked a brutal Harry and Meghan joke at the 2024 ceremony.
I missed that. Sorry, go on.
Go on. You missed
I missed that joke. I caught the other one about the issue we can't talk about right now, which seemed to divide the room somewhat, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, I love it when Ricky Gervais went down that road.
Yeah.
But the recent one, the Filipino-American comedy star didn't hold back in his debut as host of the annual awards ceremony, a job he acquired just 2 weeks ago, whose winners include Killers of the Flower Moon, starring Lily Gladstone. I've watched that. Oppenheimer, I've watched that. And Succession's Kieran Culkin. Anyway, after enthusiastically arriving on the stage, Coy poked fun at subjects ranging from Oppenheimer's running time through to Saltburn actor. Oh, have you watched Saltburn?
Yes, I have, and I've been telling everybody else to watch it as well. I don't even know what I think about it, but I know I want people to see it.
Things happen in that movie that I've never heard of happening before in real life.
I think you'll be doing a lot of this. So yeah, if you want a very cringy experience with beautiful cinematography, Saltburn's for you.
I think the moment that got me the most was when he was paying respect to the dead, let's say, and he stripped down onto the grave. And
that bit didn't get me as much as the bath scene. To be honest, that was a bit much. Yeah,
which put me off. Scene? Because there were several.
Yeah, well, let's just say it's put me right off drinking from baths for the immediate future. It's ruined drinking bath water for me. That movie.
So what I was about to say was that Coy cracked the joke, and the joke was, it turns out Harry and Meghan Markle were still getting paid millions of dollars for doing absolutely nothing, and that's just by Netflix. He told the crowd, who laughed in response. The camera zoomed in on the streaming service's CEO, Ted Sarandos, after he made the joke, but both Harry and Meghan were not present. Coy was addressing the Netflix documentary Harry and Meghan, which was released in December 2022, to mixed reviews, and saw the pair discuss their decision to step back as working members of the royal family. And the joke was categorized as brutal by viewers on social media. We had a lot of royal coverage lately on the channel. The George the Giant Slayer podcast went out last night. It's doing really well. So if you are interested in that subject, check it out. And we've got the Royal Mess coming back on Friday night with Ron Swanson. What have you got coming up, Stephen?
I've just released an interview with singer, musician Louise Distras about her experience of the music industry and what can happen to you if you have quote unquote problematic opinions about current events and big topics, how she was cancelled and how she's trying to make her way through the world as an independent content creator and musician. So that's well worth a watch. That's on my YouTube, and it's also on my Twitter account. You can find it there as well in full.
I know, it's an absolute minefield out there, isn't it, these days? Speaking of a minefield, we've got a guy who has navigated that minefield very carefully over the years. A few minds have blown him off of various platforms here and there. So I'm going to bring in Jay Dyer, and Stephen will be back with us in an hour or so. So we'll see you then, my friend.
See you soon.
Cheers. Jay, how's it going, man?
Great, Sean. How are you?
Good. Have you had a good Christmas and New Year?
Absolutely, yeah. We have a Christmas that's kind of late. So our Christmas was 3 days ago. So Orthodox Christmas falls on January 7th. So I'm still kind of recovering from Christmas. How are you?
Are you saying you actually take days off from researching those Illuminati scumbags?
I think in the work that we do, we never take days off. So we're even right, even in the holidays, we're still working on our websites and our YouTube channel, right?
Indeed. Because I've got a 4-month-old baby, it was his first Christmas, so
congrats.
Oh, thank you. It was nice to celebrate. So Jay, just for people who are not familiar with your work, could you just give us a few lines about what you do?
Yeah, I cover all kinds of stuff. We cover geopolitics over my channel. We cover kind of meta politics, big picture stuff. I don't focus on a lot of the day-to-day political drama per se, but where we're going in the world, looking at the writings of the elite. We've lectured through about 50 of those texts over the last few years. I cover a lot of film symbolism, Hollywood stuff at a deeper level. We cover a lot of philosophy. We do a lot of religious debates, all the above. And we do that not just on my channel, but also the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show every Friday. I've done that for the last 3 years. So that's pretty much what we do.
And we've been collaborating with Jay for years, so I would urge you viewers, if you're not familiar, to check out our previous episodes. I think many of them were moved over to Rumble. All right, Jay, so what are these shape-shifting reptilians? What do they have in store for us in 2024? That's the big question.
Yeah, I've done a few podcasts recently on this topic. I think you can narrow it down to about 4 or 5 potential scenarios, and I would start this discussion by going to a place that probably a lot of people have forgotten, but in the UK, you may remember this. A few years ago, there was this thing called the Integrity Initiative, and the Integrity Initiative was a joint UK NATO situation where they wanted to figure out ways to combat the disinformation of Russia. And to do this, they were going to engage in all kinds of psyops themselves. This included cyber psyops. It included using pop figures. In fact, yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, it just came out that they were talking about NATO was saying they wanted to use Taylor Swift as a mouthpiece for disinformation for NATO. Now, I don't think she went along with this, but they had actual people from NATO discussing how they were trying to get, Taylor Swift to go along with this and throwing this idea around. So, which, by the way, ties into all of our sort of Hollywood mind control stuff that we've talked about for so long. But the Integrity Initiative was a pretty wide-ranging operation to counter supposedly Russia. And it was part of this series of think tanks that at the same time was involved in constructing ways to counter the future Donald Trump administration. And so they talked about how they had to do anything possible to make sure that Trump didn't get elected again because, quote, it would be the end of the global world order that they had constructed. Now, I'm not saying this as like a defense of Trump. I'm happy to critique and be critical of Trump. I think he made a lot of mistakes. But from their vantage point, I think that the establishment sees Trump as this sort of potential figure that can awaken a lot more people. And so another Trump administration, they felt like, was very dangerous to the existing liberal world order, as they call it. And they would have to really go back to the drawing board, and it would be very disruptive, is what their fear. So they then engaged in, as we know, all of the sort of made up Russia hoax stuff with Trump. Trump got elected through Russia, and Russia hacked the DNC, and this, they bought these ads on Facebook, and this convinced all the boomers to vote for Trump, and all this nonsense, which is not true. And so when this integrity initiative sort of all fell apart, we found out that it was the British establishment, in particular former MI5, MI6 related people, that had then constructed the Steele dossier as a big psyop. I think everybody kind of knew it was a psyop, unless you're a total normie. And again, all of that's relevant here because we're going into the election year. And I think that they have to throw whatever is big enough of a crisis that it could potentially disrupt the election, not even because Donald Trump is perfect or some kind of an angel, but you can see the lawfare they're engaging in right now just to make sure that he can't even run. They wouldn't exert this much influence and power and all this energy and money if they weren't concerned, again, that it might trigger more and more people waking up. So I think that first point I would say is that they could there's 5 or 6 things they could throw at us. The first big one is the one that Klaus always talks about and has talked about ever since the coup of the last 3 or 4 years, and that is a cyber pandemic. So Klaus talks about cyber Polygon, and that one's really dangerous because the threat here is that supposedly the internet goes down on a wide scale. They ran this drill with the Fortune 100. This included IBM. It included all these different, mega corps, and the possibility of unknown hackers out there basically taking down all of our key infrastructure in the West. This could then be blamed on whoever they say. If you remember the WikiLeaks Vault 7 leaks, I mean, they could say it's anybody, right? Just like they could spoof the address or spoof the claims of who was behind this, Russia, China, whoever. And then they could say, well, because of all of this, chaos, we're going to have to implement new measures. So the crisis always brings out the intended effect that they wanted all along. So they want more clampdown. They want to shut down the internet or whatever, shut down free speech. The crisis always provides that convenient mechanism by which they can justify their tyrannical clampdown. So I think cyber Polygon is the number one potential possible scenario they could run with. I also think that the number 2 scenario in my list would be another of what we've seen in the last 3 years. So I'm trying to use coded, COOF language, if you know what I mean. If you want to talk about another, I think Bill Gates called it Pandemic 2. We'll say that. So I think that's another scenario because they didn't do all of what they did in the last 3 years for nothing. And people say, well, they wouldn't run that again because it kind of fell apart and nobody's going to buy it. Well, if there's a even worse scenario, people will buy it. They will say, oh, this is way worse than what we saw in the last 3 years, which they're estimating, 17 million, if you know what I'm talking about, had passed. So you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to use the code words here. And not,
yeah, we got you.
Yeah. So that's another potential scenario is another of these releases or something gets loose, another virus, something like that. And again, the key thing that happens in these scenarios is that the result is always what they wanted initially. And I think the medical tyranny was really the key element by which they brought in a lot of this stuff the last time around, or they tested a lot of stuff in the last 3 years. So can we get people to go along with certain tracking and tracing measures? Can we get people to basically just default to not doctors, but actually what mega corporations and the CDC, actually the United Nations, the World Health Organization, what they lay down for everybody, mandate this for everybody. And I think a lot of people went along with it. Maybe not so many will this time, but it doesn't matter because the new treaty that they're trying to pass, this UN treaty, it actually just says arrest anybody that disagrees with the government, arrest anybody that criticizes or speaks against this. So the really hard-handed situations that we saw last 3 years, like Australia, that's kind of the model for what they want to do everywhere. And this ties into the SDG DEI criteria that they want to have. And this is like, so, the Canadian trucker protests, right? When they were protesting that their situation, well, they banned people from they debanked people on the basis of these just sort of made up DEI scores, SDG scores, all this kind of stuff. So that is what the big hedge funds, BlackRock, these things, they're pushing that in the background at the same time as it would be tied into, the medical tyranny, the mandated, what's in the future. So all of that, I think, is another very and they could roll out a couple of these at once. You could get a cyber pandemic and, some sort of new release that comes out magically at the perfect time. Oh, we can't do the elections, so we got to have mail-in ballots again, and then all these trucks arrive, and suddenly it's an overwhelming landslide for Joe Biden again, and Biden's going to continue all of these wonderful policies that are making America, basically it's destroying the country, inflation, the borders, etc. It's really crazy, but yeah. So I think that the pandemic too. Is another one. Another scenario could be economic collapse. And again, it could be 2 or 3 of these at once. It could be all these. I mean, they could throw all the cards at us, right? Like their whole deck. If there was an economic collapse, then what we would have is a convenient scenario to transition us to CBDCs or something like that as the intended result. So how do we get everybody onto some sort of UBI or government dole or international dole, I guess you could say, not really government, but if everybody has to get a wallet or something like that after some giant economic collapse, then everybody has the incentive then to get a government credits that roll out in your wallet that the central bankers have set up for you. That might be the solution to how you can't have this free trade anymore. You can't have a free laissez-faire economics, you buying this and that. It would be an easy transition into a kind of a circular economy that they're always talking about at the World Economic Forum. And in fact, I was looking past couple of days at what the WEF has up on their website for problems to expect in 2024. And actually cyber crime, cyber hacking, all of that is their number one threat. So again, they keep running with that, the cyber polygon scenario. But yeah, so I think you could see something like that. Then it could get even crazier. We could see the push for the announcement of alien life. That could go off into all kinds of crazy directions. A staged fake and gray alien announcement. Alien announcements could, drive people crazy. Who knows? They're already, I think, kind of testing the waters with these hearings with the David Gorish and all this kind of stuff, talking about how, we found 10 bodies in the crafts. And they're not human, but they might be something else. This is sort of, I think, testing the waters for a large-scale alien psychological warfare operation. I think it's all fake. I think it would be very convenient for the powers that be to announce alien life. And then as a result of that, they could say, hey, we might be invaded, where there might be, an attack. Therefore, we need, in fact, they've even said this for decades. I don't know if you know about Reagan was at the United Nations in the 1980s, and he said that if it was ever announced that there was alien life, it might finally lead us to a world government. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip, but yeah, it's a famous clip of Ronald Reagan at the United Nations in the 80s saying that alien life would lead us to a one world government. So you see the threats then it's not even about the threats. It's just the end result they want is the world government. So whatever is useful to get there. So we could have a war, a global war. That's another one of the obvious scenarios. People say, oh, what about an EMP attack? I mean, that's possible too. I think that would probably be in the context of just a war, which is possible. They could say, well, hey, it's going to spin out of control. Middle East is now going wild. We're going to have to put troops in the Middle East and be involved in this warfare. And then that spreads from that region to other regions. So we could get another, global war. So all of those, again, I think are the big key scenario, and because they need something big enough to really distract from the coming election. Of course, if you look at things like the integrity leaks and all that, why they couldn't have another Trump administration. Yeah, so I think you have to, the USA is kind of the center of the world empire as it is right now. And so if you can take down that world empire, you can rebuild, you can have this reset. So I think there are certain protections in the West with, the remnants of rule by law. All of that has to kind of go away before they can really move to the next stage of what the WF wants with the Great Reset. With, you own nothing, you have nothing, yet you're kind of given a UBI or something like that. You live in a coon pod in a box apartment in a giant megalopolis. I mean, that's really where they want to go. So it's whatever's going to get them to that end result. I mean, they're already going crazy with, killing 100,000 cows in Ireland because cows are bad for the planet. You need to eat bugs, not meat. I mean, this is all very real. But I think it's worth gaming out, what are the potential scenarios for 2024.
Well said, Jay. You've covered a lot of ground there, and several questions have arisen in my mind and the minds of the viewers. And we'll start with A Nexus. How do the forces behind a cyber pandemic inoculate themselves against their personal business internet going down?
It looks like in Cyber Polygon, when you read the war game, they don't really mind the businesses themselves kind of going down for a while. And in fact, it would probably be the case that, in other words, these would be controlled and managed. So I think probably a lot of the top Fortune 100 / Fortune 500, they would be aware, or they might be in on it at the top level. So they might shut down. They might just shut it down and say, oh, well, we don't know why, we just shut down. So, that's a possibility. I'm not like a cyber hacking expert, so I don't know a whole lot about that. But just looking at their scenario in the war game that they ran, I don't think it shut down the entire internet, but basically significant portions of the Western world's infrastructure was kind of off for a while, right? So it wasn't like it destroyed the whole internet or something like that. It was like, maybe the internet goes down in America for a few days, then it's back up, but banking isn't back up. Maybe other things like healthcare administration being online, maybe that's down for a week. So it's sort of like this staggered thing of different scenarios of different corporations and different things. Logistics, like maybe the logistics between how trucking is organized online or whatever through the internet, maybe that goes down and they can't organize where to send their trucks out, so you don't get goods. Supply lines are down maybe for a week, a month, something like that. And we already kind of saw elements of that during 2020 to 2022. I don't know what it was like in the UK, but where I live, even out here in the country, we had a few situations where there was, I think, maybe a week or two where there was no meat. Like the grocery stores were no meat because the trucking couldn't get here because there was COVID on everything, right? So, you could see. I mean, remember the toilet paper fiasco? I don't know if the UK had toilet paper, but like everybody bought up toilet paper, which is a sort of weird meme that was going around the internet, like you wouldn't get toilet paper ever again. So I think we had about a month where there was no toilet paper, and so I just basically shat myself and just no, I'm joking. No, we had toilet paper. I don't know. I mean, you could buy Kleenexes or whatever. But did you have the toilet paper problem in the UK? I don't know.
Oh, they were showing videos of people running around the aisles in grocery stores, grabbing the last of the toilet roll and arguing and fighting, and it was mayhem.
It was that way in the UK too?
Yeah.
Okay.
But one of the first things everybody went for was toilet paper.
Yeah.
But in America, didn't they go for guns and stuff like that too?
Well, it depends on where you live. I mean, where I live, everybody owns guns already. So nobody's going to be running for guns because everybody has it. But there could have been some places where, maybe maybe it's harder to get a gun that they were trying to go for that. But yeah, I think that to answer that question, I think that the cyber pandemic would be very controlled. It would be very pinpoint focused at the weak points in any country's logistics. And so it wouldn't really ultimately hurt Amazon or, any of the big corps.
So don't throw your checkbooks away, folks, like I've done, because it may come in handy if we have to go back to the old school banking techniques. All right. Jake wants to know, has World War III already started?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, you're right. That was the, number 4 or 5 scenario, because they can always, hype up a war or take it to the next level, or say that the existing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East have spun out of control, or they can spark a new conflict in some other region. Or, I mean, it's getting crazy to the point where in the US, I mean, there's so many people not from the US coming into the US on a daily basis that you could have those people potentially intended to be some sort of internal force to change the country. I know we're not at that point yet, but it could get to that situation if we have another, say, 5 or 6 years of Joe Biden, who, I mean, it's not just people who are looking for a better life, is what I'm trying to say, which I can understand why people would want to come, from another country, Latin, South America, or whatever. But it's people from all over the world. And a lot of the videos that you see, there's no women or children there. It's like, military age dudes. Where's all the women and children, right? And I think that's intentional. I was just talking to a friend of mine in Ecuador, and he was talking about all of the ads and the promotions that they have everywhere in Ecuador for coming to America. And a lot of it is just scams that coyotes, they make you into, basically a tool for extracting money from your family. So cartels will promote this. It's basically just a big scam. But the Biden administration, I think, collaborates with the cartels to foster that border operation. So point being is that, yeah, I think that could be a potential connection to a war scenario, or an attempt to instigate a civil war, you could say. I mean, if you watch a lot of the pop culture, which we do, not because it's like a tool for divination or something like that, it doesn't perfectly predict the future, but you can kind of tell from sometimes the propaganda that they're pushing where they might go. And so we've seen with this big Obama produced Netflix movie that came out, Leave the World Behind, that has basically all the scenarios that I'm talking about, where really it begins with a cyber attack. We don't know what's going on in the film, but basically America goes down in terms of satellites and internet connection. Everybody's trying to figure out what the cyber polygon was. And then it turns into more of a military style conflict where you have these EMPs go off, and then you have like these weird biological warfare things that are released. The film doesn't ever say who the enemies are, but it does say that basically there was this internal group, this cabal, who was involved in, taking down the U.S. or the West or whatever. So again, the long answer to say that, yeah, that's very possible that a World War III scenario, which a World War III scenario could conveniently also encapsulate all these other potential scenarios, right? They could say, if we go into a hot war, when the internet goes down, oh, the Russians took the internet down. Oh, the Russians, did this or that. They collapsed the stock market through their hackers, something like that.
Yeah, and Trump let them in.
Exactly.
Going back to what you said about Trump, Biden, and the economy then. So, you mentioned these crazy allegations they made against Trump to try and torpedo his chances. But don't you think they've inadvertently increased his popularity by doing so? And as these things have been exposed to be so absurd, it's just had the opposite effect. And you did mention about the economy and a collapse. It seems to me that they're inflating the stock market presently to try and increase the chances of the incumbent, because they do realize that they have made Trump more popular. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that they really were trying anything they could. So I think they want to use the methods that are the quickest and the simplest first. So they would rather, try to use lawfare, for example, which is happening right now with all these court cases, to try to take them off of various ballots and so forth. So I think that's the first route they go for. If that doesn't work, I think they'll ramp up to the next levels, right? Which would be the kinds of things that I'm talking about. Another scenario, I think maybe even before these big scenarios, would be something like, suddenly we have a crazed MAGA person, right? And we don't even know if they are, right? Maybe there's just some random, a provocateur or some mind control lunatic or whatever let out of the asylum, and they put a Trump hat on him, and he goes and he does some big fake flag event where he pops off at a bunch of people in a mall. I mean, it could be anything like that as well, right? Or it could be the last time this happened in the U.S., it was like an OKC type event. If you know about the history of that, there was a kind of a rising populism at that time against the Clinton administration and the establishment at that time, and they conveniently had a crazed fundamentalist person involved in kind of a weird far-right cult called Elohim City, and that ended up being the perfect event to show that, oh, you see all of these people who are right-wing populists at that time, oh, they're all crazy and they're terror type people. So if you look into the OKC event, I think it was like a 911 before 911, but rather than it being Islamic oriented, it was right-wing populism oriented, and it did its job. Now it'll be harder, I think, if they go with that fake flag event, somebody trying to assassinate somebody or something like that. That would be harder within the days of the internet now that we're in to completely concoct a story. But I mean, it still would probably work. I think you still have enough of the population that are completely zombies that they would probably still believe it.
We've got just over 5 minutes left with Jay Dyer. Please put your questions in the chat wherever you are watching this in the world. And the next question is from Fred. How is Jay's religious knowledge? Has he heard about the theory we're in a false timeline and Jesus has already come back and that Satan is running the show?
Well, I don't know how you would gauge my religious knowledge. I mean, I do talk about theology and all that stuff quite a bit, philosophy, metaphysics. The closest thing I could think of to what you're talking about sounds like Philip K. Dick's worldview. So I don't know if you know Philip K. Dick is the sci-fi writer, right? So he actually had this view that in sometime, if you read the book of Acts after the life of Christ, the apostles are preaching the gospel in the book of Acts, and then I don't know where he got this idea, but Philip K. Dick thought that in the middle of the book of Acts, Jesus had come back and that it was like not successful or something. And so we were launched into this like CERN alternate timeline where we're under Satan. So I don't know where Philip K. Dick came up with that. It's kind of a wild out there thing. If you watch the movie, Richard Linklater's movie Waking Life, which is kind of a famous, it was shot in rotoscope. It's kind of an edgy 20-year-old kind of art house film. In Waking Life, there's a sequence where somebody has an interview. It's a stage interview with Philip K. Dick, and he actually goes into this this kind of timeline. So I don't think that that's true. No, I don't think we live in a secret alternate timeline.
Right. Smasher Dobson wants to know who runs the world. Let's talk about that, not actors from the government theater show.
Well, I mean, I've been doing the last fourth hour that I did was a really in-depth dive into Jeff Stein McEfrey. You probably know who I'm talking about. So I went pretty deep into the history of that whole operation and how these high-level people, I mean, I don't think it's one group of ethnic people. I think that it's a lot of different people from a lot of different groups that all collaborate at a really high level in terms of international crime. So basically, the way I see it is, if you take the analogy of mafia, organized crime, and you put that at like the Fortune 100 level, that's who's really running the planet, right? So it's like higher level, super psychopath type people at the WEF, people at BILDER Berg, people at these steering committee meetings. They're the ones that are calling the shots. And so although Jeff Stein McEfrey isn't himself he wasn't at the top of the pyramid, he was an operation that's a window into how the international organized crime clique works. And you can see that by going into to Ghislaine's father, his role in the Cold War, his role in hostile corporate takeovers that Macmillan, when he took over Macmillan Publishing. You can see how that kind of crime syndicate works at that level. So that's how I would say it works, who's running things.
Anon, thoughts on Elon Musk?
Well, I was surprised when Alex did that big interview with him a couple weeks ago. That was kind of a shock to me. I didn't think that it was going to be that kind of explosive. I mean, Alex has been saying for a long time that Elon is, on the right side of things. I would like to hope so. So, in my view, best case scenario, Elon is genuinely red pill, genuinely waking up, and then he's kind of still got maybe some elements of the NWO worldview there, maybe with his transhumanism stuff. And maybe he's like on a journey of like kind of awakening. I mean, I would say it seems like the same with Tucker. Tucker has gone from a very normie position over the last 10 years to, admitting he was wrong about the Big 9 event, all the way to being pretty open and awake to what's really going on. So I want to hope that with Elon, that's definitely the case. Worst case scenario, he's just kind of trolling everybody, and he really is part of the system. In terms of not just being, I mean, obviously he's part of the system in the sense that he's a very wealthy, powerful, elite person, but in the sense of like willingly being on board with this agenda. So I think that when you start going against the Depop agenda, that's a good indicator that maybe they really are kind of waking up, because you're not allowed to be in the system at that level, at the high top player level that we were just talking about with the previous question, unless you're on board with all of the scenarios. So yeah,
we've got a minute left. Let's see what you can squeeze out of this question. Is there any chance elites start to gain a sense of nationalism rather than globalism? How don't elites just co-opt nationalism when the wind is blowing in that direction anyway?
Exactly. Yeah, I think if there was a rising tide of nationalism, they would just kind of, like you said, go back to co-opting that movement. And they're very adept. The elites are very adept at steering and controlling through deception, through provocateurs, through money, just buying off the leaders. I mean, that's really just look at the whole Jeff Stein McEffery thing. It's basically just compromising really high-level people, then they're controlled. So they would do the same thing with the new nationalist leaders. They would try to compromise them in all the classic methods.
Huge thank you, Jay. Do you want to tell the viewers where they can find you and support you, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me. You can go to jaysanalysis.com is my website. You can find me on Rockfin, great free speech-based platform. You can find me on YouTube, Twitter, all of those under my name, Jay Dyer or Jay's Analysis.
Brilliant. Look forward to speaking to you soon, my friend. Take care, Jay.
Again,
Cheers.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.